I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth rightly well. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth rightly well. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth rightly well.
It's been a while. The blessings we have, we are receiving abundantly. So we've been tired, happily tired. And, so today, anyway, I just thought I would take you to a place called Old Bulawayo. So Bulawayo is rich in history. It's beautiful. And in this place in particular, it used to be Lovengola's capital. And as we do that, I would just like to make a salad as a meal for now. It's almost mealtime. So the story of Old Bulawayo is quite an interesting one. Lobengula was son to Mzilikazi who was general to Shaka. So he got some booty of cattle from the Soto people. And interestingly, Zimbabwe is a cattle country. Divergence. Anyway, so he got some booty of cattle from the Soto people, which he then chose to flee with. He does not return it to Shaka. So to save his life, they then begin to migrate. South of Zimbabwe is where they begin, and they continue and enter into Zimbabwe. And after the death of Mzilikazi, his son, Lobengula, then takes over. So it was customary that they would settle at a place and then choose a capital. From that capital, should there arise any threat, external threat, or undesirable weather conditions, they would then relocate to a different capital. So this site in particular was Lobengula's capital. And then when the colonialists came, he then fled. And Lobengula would traditionally just burn down a previous capital. So the remains that actually remain are reconstructions of what they could find. And interesting enough, these people had a rich heritage and history. Their dress code was specific. So you knew that these belonged to the Kumalo clan, which were the royals, and they held themselves in high esteem. It was a privilege to be part of that clan. And then there was the Indaba tree, which is where cases would be tried. So today this would be our high court. Probably they did not have the hierarchy similar to ours, but anyway, this is where the magistrates, the high court, the supreme and constitutional court were. If someone would reach this place unannounced or in a suspicious manner, they would be immediately killed. And then there was the royal enclosure, which is where the royals would stay. So they would have the crawl, and then in the outer part of the residential site was where the amahole, or the assimilated people, would stay, who were not very important. Then the royals, and lastly in the center was where the king would reside for protection. It's quite interesting that the same demarcation of the three sites exists, and it had me thinking of the three parts of the sanctuary as well, where we had the outer court, the holy place, and the most holy place, but we will discuss that later. So Lobengula had a house that was built for him by the colonials, but he refused to reside in that house, and he chose rather to stay in the one that he had built, which had a heart shape, a dome shape rather, and this is where he stayed for the greater part of his life. I am told this snort apple has existed since around that time. However, I cannot prove it. This is the structure of Lobengula's house, which he chose to reside in. And this, of course, is a reconstruction, a beautiful one. You do have the site of his sister's house and the site of his wife's house. Such beautiful architecture.
What would happen is, if ever any person remained at an abandoned capital, it would leave them prone or prey to other groups that were coming to then be assimilated, but usually as a slave and never as something or someone significant. Right. When you study the book Early Writing, we are told that there is a heavenly sanctuary, and that Christ is ministering in different compartments of the heavenly sanctuary. So what is happening right now is that Christ is in the most holy place, but at some point he was in the holy place. Therefore, what directs our life on earth as Christians is the position that Christ is in the most holy place. How we are to eat, how we are to dress, what we are to watch, love people, everything we are supposed to do is directed by the position that Christ is in right now in the most holy place. And so a vision is given where Ellen White sees people that remain in the holy place when Christ has moved in the most holy place. And they think they are still worshiping God, but then they missed that Christ had moved into the most holy place. And so at the place, the throne where Christ was seated, the devil is the one who then occupies that place. How did the people fail to move with Christ? Well, Christ gave them commandments that were time specific to that time, and they chose not to do it. A similar scenario might be painted today, where we have been given reforms that are appropriate for our time today. And so failure to move with Christ from the holy place to the most holy place in those reforms makes us prone and prey to become slaves to the devil and not servants of Jesus Christ. So the call comes and it says, move with me to the most holy place. Take the pot of manna, eat of healthful foods, embrace the health reform message, embrace the dress reform message, embrace the social reform message, embrace the reform to primitive godliness that I am calling my people to partake of right now. But we are resisting it. We do not want to partake of this blessing that Christ is giving us. So this leaves us prey as Christians, as Adventists who are awaiting the coming of Christ, to think that we are still worshiping the same Christ who was once in the holy place. And this causes us not to realize that there has been a change of posture. He has moved into the most holy place, and he is now calling you and I to move with him. You see, my brothers and sisters, it is not a matter of whether or not you eat meat, for that is not to be a test of faith. But the reason why you continue in this behavior is what Christ wants to address. The same voice that has commanded us to remember the Sabbath is the same voice that is commanding us to partake of these reforms, to be a peculiar people, a distinct people that is called by God, chosen by God. It need not happen that any of us fall trap to what the devil is devising for us in these last days. It need not happen that any of us find justification for sin in these final days. It need not happen that any of us have reason not to obey God. We ought to take him at his word, to trust and obey him, to know that what comes first is obedience, and then evidence can follow. You know, we are so willing to take human prescriptions, but too wise in our sight to question God himself. How quickly we have embraced what the world has given us, but we question the one who has created us and the world. May God help us to trust him, to obey him, childlike trust, and just to hold on, to know that these are the days of the final conflict. Soon it will be over, and victory is assured on the Lord's side. And so I hope you enjoyed our trip, Old Bulawayo, everything that you saw, and what is gonna happen. There will be an official opening and launch of the place. It was still under construction in some sites, but it's absolutely beautiful. And as you go there, just think of what the Lord impresses on your mind. Always, with everything, the Lord is looking for channels of communicating to us. Hence the importance of keeping our minds in the sober state so that we receive communion and communication from heaven. Otherwise, thank you so much for stopping by. I am blessed and happy to have you as always. May the Lord keep you safe. And remember that we'll soon be going home. Bye. Till next time. Oh, there's a song that's written, No Commandments. I think it's appropriate to listen to with regards to this video. Yeah, I hope you like it. Thanks.
For God has given no commandment which cannot be obeyed by all. God has given no commandment which cannot be obeyed